Okay, so I was originally going to speak about kind of like my whole career from what I'd say was the start of it in 2008. Right after the financial crisis, I was a dropout of Rutgers University, was studying music education at the time, right? And I just took a different path, right? But the more I gave this talk and the more I kind of ran it by my family and friends and people I was mentoring, the more I realized there was one very critical nexus or waypoint that I got asked a lot of questions about. And I kind of want to cover that as opposed to my whole timeline, right? And that's the nexus between being a student who's fairly well-read, who understands data science concepts, the techniques, the tricks, everything that goes into it, and actually getting a spot or a position as an intern or as a full-time employee, right? And I think that a lot of people do what they see, they kind of follow the information they see on Reddit or on LinkedIn, and they don't get the results they necessarily want. So I'm going to focus on that very specific waypoint. Cool. So there's me in the summer of 2014. I was like, you guys find me? Guess who I am? Right there, with a duck in my hand. So I was a young sergeant. I knew I'd been accepted to Columbia already. And I wrote my first Hello World maybe 3 months before that, right? So this is 2014, the summer. Basically no experience, starting from nothing, right? I was a kid who was kind of good at math growing up, but that's about it, right? Didn't care about stats, didn't care about machine learning, didn't know what it was, right? Here's me 2 years later, a little bit harder to find. That's the Facebook intern class of 2016 in Facebook Seattle. There were 3 data science interns there, right? So in those 2 years, I bumped into a lot of walls, made a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, I think there were 2 really crucial things that I focused on that actually got me to where I wanted to be. And just to give you guys some perspective, just about every single day, someone will ask me something along these lines, right? It's hey Kyle, again, I'm a student, I've been studying data scientists, I've been studying stats, how do I actually make the jump into industry, how do I get an internship or a position, right? And after kind of observing junior data scientists in my career and speaking with recruiters, I think there are 2 things to focus on, and we're going to go over those things. Cool. Before we do that though, let's go over the foundation, all right? So before you start actually looking for a position, I'd highly recommend you develop very basic data analyst skills, right? So if someone gives you a CSV file and that's of transactions for a store, and there's a column that's gender, and they say how many of these transactions were from women, right? You should be able to answer that question without having to Google it, right? It's okay to Google pretty much everything, but you should be fast with these very basic data analyst skills. Basic summary statistics, loading up a data frame. These are things you should be well versed in, and look to get good at that before the machine learning and all the crazy stuff, right? You just want to be a good analyst before anything else. Secondly, linear algebra. So the deeper I go into hardcore machine learning, whatever, even with basic summary statistics, I realize that the operating system my brain is using is very much linear algebra. And if you don't have that basis, it's a lot harder to conceptualize a lot of the higher level topics as they present themselves. And lastly is basic programming. You should be able to automate things, right? It's just helpful, right? Something you should know, and you'll be asked to do it. So don't skip these 3 things, do them, and then we can talk about what we're going to talk about. Cool. So how do I actually break into the industry? Again, there are 2 skills that I want to focus on. And the first one is working in a lab. Who here has been a research assistant in a lab or done research? Or you're a PhD student? Cool. Okay. Highly recommend doing it. It's a little bit intimidating. I kind of got thrown into it. So this is me. I'm kind of on the bottom right there. This is the Laboratory for Intergroup Relations in the Social Mind at Columbia. Keep in mind, this is not a machine learning lab. This is not an NLP lab. It's a pure social psych, right? So I was introduced to the postdoc there who was working on some machine learning problems. But when it comes down to it, there are a lot of labs in academia, and they might not be related to machine learning or data science, but they need your data skills, right? Doing research it's people who are highly specialized, right? And they don't have time to build these very general data skills that you have if you've been doing what you're supposed to, and your skills are going to be in demand, right? A lot of the time, just firing off an email to a research assistant or a lab manager will get your foot in the door and really help you become part of the lab. I'd say consider all departments. So again, this is a social psych lab. This is not some hardcore MBA, fair, AI lab, right? Keep an open mind. Chemistry has some great opportunities for you to use data. Business, economics, even law departments now are really great places to go if you want to leverage your data skills. And lastly, be open to learning and teaching, right? So when I was there, I knew nothing about social psychology, right? I had a friend who knew a little bit, but I knew nothing about it, right? And I went there with an open mind and accepted that even though I'm going to be helping with these data problems, like they can teach me things too, right? At the same time, I remember we were working on a project where a research assistant was making a poster, and she plotted a regression model with the data points, and her line was really jumpy, right? So what does that mean? If you're a data scientist, you know that means you need some like regularization, right, to smooth out the model a little bit. And I was happy to help, right? So that's that's how you can kind of contribute your data science skills to a laboratory in academia. Cool. All right, number 2, contribute to open source. I think this one probably makes the biggest difference when it comes to sheer like hardcore ability for data scientists. You meet a lot of like junior data scientists who are afraid of command line, right? They're afraid to like write a lot of code, right? If that's you, don't worry about it. It's cool. You can work on it, right? It's not permanent. But yeah, I think contributing to open source is the best way to like deal with this problem and turn it into a strength. I was lucky enough to be introduced to a guy named Andreas Möller. Anyone recognize that name? Andreas Möller? Okay, he's a release manager for scikit-learn. I think Jake Vanderplas works here. He's the release manager for Pandas. So reach out to that dude if you be a good idea. But yeah, the best way to start off doing that is to contribute to tools that you use first, right? These are all great examples. If you're a data scientist, you should be very familiar with these. The benefit of that is that when you're contributing to something like Jupyter, you already understand the use case, right? So when you make a change, you understand what it's supposed to look like and how it's going to benefit other users. And when you do this, really put on your software engineering hat, right? I mean, it's one thing to want to use like machine learning algorithms that you just learned. You know, you're excited to use them, but when it comes down to it, you should also be a good software engineer in your own right. And I think contributing to open source is like a really good way to do it. Okay. As far as making your first pull request, so when you go to GitHub, you pull up one of these repositories, right? Let's say you use Jupyter, right? You pull up Jupyter, there's a little tab called Issues, right? Click on the Issues tab, and it'll show you things that are wrong or bugs that have been reported, right? You can sort these by tag. A lot of them have tags that say like easy or good first pull request, right? Make that your first contribution. Don't like check out Jupyter and try to add a huge feature to it, right? It's too much to start out with. Start out with like a very simple feature so the maintainers get to know you and so you can learn your way around the library. So again, contribute to open source. You can start right now and reach out to Jake Vanderplas. Cool. And lastly, make your upperclassmen friends refer you. I wanted to make the slide like bright red, but I thought it was kind of an overkill. But this is like the most bang for your buck, right? You all have taken CS classes or stats classes, and you know that one dude who got hired to a really good position at a really cool company, right? That guy can take 5 minutes out of his day and just refer you. Getting a referral to these companies, it's like, it takes no time, and it's kind of a win-win, right? They need like a constant stream of high-quality applicants. You need a job, right? Your friend can spare 5 minutes. And when they refer you through the internal system, someone has to review your resume, right? And that gets you past like 80% of other applicants. So definitely start with the referral. Cool. And lastly, understand that data science is it's a powerful skill set. It kind of gives you this kind of like a high-level vision that most people just don't have access to. And even if you don't want to be a data scientist, you can really translate the skills to whatever field you're looking at. So again, highly encourage you guys to develop this skill set and understand that it's like applicable to many, many, many domains. Okay, cool. I'm going to be around to answer questions and socialize with you guys a little bit. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, maybe not GitHub, or via email or in person. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.